Welcome back to the Python Codes YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to be looking at using functions with the Python library Reportlab to generate PDFs with multiple charts and tables. So we'll be looking at the idea of using functions to reproduce an example of creating charts and tables, so we can create many charts and tables with efficient programming in the Python language. So I'm going to be doing this tutorial in Google Colab. Just going to show you how to get started in Google Colab. Search for Google Colab in your Chrome browser, and you'll be there right away. Once you log in with a Google account, you're all set. Your environment's set up, everything's there, and it's free. Yep, and that's all you'll need for this tutorial. So this is a workbook I used in a previous tutorial that is linked below, where I do an example of producing a chart and a table in a PDF. And this is what it looked like. It was the US GDP. Actually, that's a mistake. It says trillions of US dollars. It should be billions. Well, this is what I made with that snippet of code. In this video, I'm looking at expanding this. I'm going to be using functions to produce something more like this, where I'll have a title page, but then I'll have the same thing I had in the previous video, but then I'm also going to expand it by using a user-defined function and reproducing the same snippet to make one for California, Texas, and you could expand this with very easily to do it for all 50 US states if you wanted to. And the idea here is that we're, just easily showing something that can be done over and over again. So I'm just going to, as my basis, I'm just going to start by copying and pasting the entire code from that tutorial. Again, that's linked below in the description below. Just double checking it runs without an error before I get started. And here I'll look in the file area for my outputs as I go, but I'm going to add a new section of code. And again, everything I work on in this video will also be linked in the description below to my GitHub page. So I'm going to start with I don't need to do anything with my imports. They just came over from that other section above. I'm going to create my first function here. I'm going to call it get observation dates. So there's this observation start and observation end. Observation end is dynamic. It's based on today's date, and observation start is right now arbitrarily 2015 0101, but I could make it something else. What it's a general practice with a user-defined function is to at least put a comment about what it's doing, what its purpose is. Just it's a good habit to get into for readability for other people who might look at your code. If you have parameters, which I'm not going to put any in this one, you could also mention what they are or what this returns. I won't go into that detail just because this is very straightforward. And I'm going to want to use a return statement to put out when I use this function what's going to get returned. So I'm just going to make it observation start, and observation end. And then how I'll just show you quickly how we would call this if we want to. we could say, obs start, or you could use the same name, or obs end equals, and then just call that function there. And then obs start and obs end will be observation start and observation end, and you can use them further down in another function, or just further down in this script, or in this notebook. Sorry. So now we're going to get on to turning this main section into a working sort of function. And this is the bit that is going to be repeated plenty of times. So I'll add to the parameters of this function as we go. As we think about what we want to reproduce. And you'll see what I mean as I go through it. If you're familiar with a usually defined function, that should be fairly straightforward. But if you're not, it'll become more clear as we go through repurposing this code where there were no functions to see what I'm going to use. Also, I forgot to put a colon in that first function, so not off to a good start there. Also, mention here, when you're in a notebook, Jupyter Notebook, and you press enter, it'll put you in the right spot you need to be. I tend to just use 4 spaces, because of course indentation matters in Python. So we want to, I generally go 4 spaces, but you can just press return, and it will do the same thing in a Jupyter Notebook. Again, I'm going to write a description about what we're doing here. We're doing a few different things. So we're getting data from the Fred API there. With Fred API, if you haven't watched the previous video, it's the Federal Reserve Economic Database. I'm using Pandas Data Reader library to access it, and I pull in my series there, which are like GDP and unemployment rate for the United States, and then I create a GDP chart and an unemployment rate table. And so that's what this snippet will do, and then of course saves them in a PDF. And for a multiple line comment, you can just see, I'm probably just going to set it up this way. And again, I'm going to go 4 spaces in, and I'll start reading in the data, and we'll look at what parameters I add as I go to the function I'm making called preprocess add to PDF, which is sort of attempting to be descriptive. So right here is probably the first change I'm going to be making. We can call this series. And we're also going to want one. I'm going to make one out the gate called PDF. That's going to be the PDF we write, and then the second one I'll make series. And if we want to access a GDP, which was the first one, it'll be series 0, and then and the second one will be what is that called? Unemployment rate. That'll be series 1. And so we'll do the same steps we did, the same names for the columns. So there's, creating a year in a particular format, and forward filling the GDP data, because, again, if you haven't watched the previous video, it's a quarterly series, and we want to, for graphical purposes, so the graph looks nice, we want to just make it look like it's monthly and there's no breaks in the data for a line chart. Again, we're going to be calling this series 0 because we're going to use this function up here to put multiple, we're going to call it and put multiple series in there for those different states. So, for example, for the series here, your first object will be the GDP, and then second will be the unemployment rate. So that will, when we call this resolve to GDP for the national one, and then you'll see something different for other times when we use this function. So we'll be using this for the states, which will be different. So to make this reproducible, we're going to call it series 0 here. Okay, and then we'll just keep on reworking this code, replacing unrate with series 1, and we'll keep year, month. So those columns won't change. And this isn't necessarily a bad way to go. Sometimes when you're testing things is, to have one example that works the way you want it, and then to go back through and replace it, replace it, for example, these with some of the parameters you're putting in the function once you've tested it in that one case. And so as I'm going, I'm just sort of checking through this, what do I need to replace, and also thinking about what the next parameters will be to add to this function, which is the most extensive one. We'll do another one at the end as well to actually generate the PDF as well. So we'll do 3 functions in total. Go ahead and put the name of the PDF, the GDP chart up here, and also change the name of it. Just call it chart file. I think works well, as it's going to take on different names, and I'm going to use an F string here to put in again series 0, just GDP, but it'll have a bit more detail in it in terms of whether it's the state code or just GDP for the national one. So that will resolve to GDP for the national one, but for the state one, it will say I think it's like CA GDP for California or something like that. I'll double check what it is. But for now, the F string will do the job there. And, having a bit of trouble here. I just want to move that over 4 spaces. And I'm also going to go ahead, and something I didn't do in the previous block of code in the previous video, was to set the size of the chart that we're putting in here. And I'm going to constrain it here with this fixed size argument in Matplotlib. And again, always look at what the parameters are. It's kind of handy in Jupyter Notebook to see exactly what's going on here, especially if you don't use one of these libraries very often. So I'm just going to make sure there's nothing untoward and that we standardize the size of the charts. Can also do that in Reportlab, so it may end up being a little bit redundant, but we just want to make sure they're the same. Again, here I'm going to have to set data GDP will just be data series 0. And my X label is always going to be year. But I'm going to want to make the Y label another parameter here, because it's not going to be the same. Depending on, because I'm going to be doing this for different states. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that and just replace it with a new parameter, which we can go ahead and call Y label. You can also, as you're making these different parameters, it's not a bad idea to list out what they are in the multi-line comment I have at the top of this function. I'm not going to do that in this video, but that's not a bad habit to be in general. And I'm going to go ahead and make a first title here for this plot that I'm going to call title 0. So I need to keep track of these and add them to my function. So that first one was, we'll go ahead and put title 0 in, and then the next one will be Y label. And I'll just get ready for, I know I'm going to add a couple more, so I'll just be ready for that. And go ahead and I decided to change the name of the chart to chart file, so I'll just put that in there. I'll get rid of this commented out code here. And then we're going to use that that canvas code later, so I'll probably go ahead and get rid of that. In the meantime, I'll just close the use of the .png file, and that will be saved as well. Now we're going to be thinking about how we're going to put in the table. So I'm actually going to delete this. We'll end up writing it again later. As the workflow's changed slightly here. So we're going to be jumping right into adding the table. Oh, sorry, actually, let's add the chart to the PDF first, which is, of course, needed. So we're going to want to use the, we'll use these, the width and height, and then we'll key off that to sort of determine where exactly our chart's going to go. And of course, I'm change the name of it to PDF. So it's going to be PDF.setTitle. That's the first argument in our function. I'm going to put my chart up the top. And then I'm going to end up having another title below. And of course, I want to make sure I get the right name for the chart. And I'm not having a big title like I did in the one just for national. I'm just going to have a title below to explain what this is. I'm probably going to want to call this. We'll call this Title 1 because we used Title 0 for the chart title, if you will, earlier on. And so this will be the next parameter to our pre-process add to PDF function. So we use title 0 there, we'll use title 1 here. And so that'll be the title for the table we're going to be adding in. And there also we've actually added the chart that we made. Again, that's going to be different as we get to the last function in this tutorial. We'll see that we'll use different parameters and for the different US states. And again, I'm just making sure I change these from doc to PDF. I changed the name. And now I'll have to make some changes to this snippet here. So here we're creating a list of the values that are in the table data. And we're going to want the widths of the data that are in there. And this worked quite well for the example, so we'll go ahead and use those same widths where before I put this in functions in the previous snippet above, those widths work, so we'll go ahead and use them. I'm going to delete a third title. It's not necessary, or we replace it above. And this comment kind of goes to what we just did. So we just go ahead and delete some of these comments. And then now we're going to look at adding the style to the table. I'm just going to use exactly what we did in the previous video. There's a lot of table style settings you can use. I've made it fairly basic by just doing the background, doing the alignment to align the numbers in the table, the values in the table to be center, and the year column will left align, which is the default. And on the top row, I'm making that have a background gray. Again, I also link to the Reportlab documentation in the description below, and you can really look at some of the like all the myriad of options there are here with the style. And I'm going to just turn these settings on, wrap on, and draw on. So text is wrapped. And going to use show page, pdf.show page here, which I didn't use in the previous video, because as we write each page, we're going to want that, whereas before we just needed to save it at the end, which we'll also do in this, but that'll be at the end of multiple pages. So now I'm going to start the final function, which will be the one where we actually create the PDF. So we'll call both of these other functions inside it, and also start writing the PDF. And after we've called those other functions, we'll close the PDF and save it. So as a short description for this function, I'll say creates the final PDF. And we won't need, we don't necessarily need arguments for it. So here I'm just going to remember that with the first function we made, we returned two objects, and that'll be, I'm just going to call them the same name, observation start and observation end. And now I'm thinking about it, I should probably put them in the preprocess add to PDF function as a parameter too. And that's how we'll call that first function. And here I deleted this line earlier, and it's going to be PDF equals canvas and dot canvas and whatever we're calling the PDF. And we're also going to want to establish the size using the page size parameter equals letter. Again, there are other options for that you can look at. So this will be another new part where we'll just make a front page, which will just basically be a title page, essentially. We're also going to want to make width and height equals letter, so we can key off that for where we exactly want this new title on that opening page. And it's just kind of an expanded title, U.S. economies and state economies. And I'll go ahead and make this, I'll use Helvetica. I've been using it throughout, and I'll just make this a big size, like 24. And now we've got to think about how far down we want this. So we'll use drawstring, and then we'll indent it to 100 from the left, and then try and get the height around the middle of the page. So height minus 350 should get us pretty close. Remember, this is the bottom left-hand corner of where you're inserting that string. And when I set the title, with the set title, of course, like when you open this in Chrome, this is the title you see in the Chrome tab, or if you used Adobe or something, what you'd see at the top, but not necessarily inside the PDF. And again, I'm going to use show page here, so we write that page, but then we're not closing the PDF, so we can write more pages when we call series and our for our other pages. So, we're adding sections here for USA, California, and Texas. And that'll be with the California GDP and unemployment rate and the Texas unemployment and GDP rate. And to look up these codes, you're not necessarily going to know them off the top of your head. You just go ahead and search for the Fred API, and Panda's data reader will call to the Fred API, and using these codes, you'll get that in your data frame. You'll get these data in your data frame in the same format we had the other one. So this is how I get these codes. Just search for Texas GDP, and then I've got that one too. And similar thing for unemployment rate. So now you can see in my function what the what the different parameters are. PDF. And here in this first one, I'm going to use the national series, the GDP and unrate. Yeah, and then we can add the other parameters. We can look back at our function here too. And before I do that, I never did add observation start and observation end, because we could potentially want to change that for different states if we chose to. And sometimes it's also not a bad idea to put, and you can do this, I'm not going to do it, but you can put title equals the name of the title and so on for each parameter, which sort of spells it out for someone reading your code. I'm not going to do that in this one. I'll just go ahead. It's fairly straightforward to follow, so I can just go ahead and do it this way, where I just write the parameters for this particular use of the function. So here I'm writing GDP of USA, because remember this is the national, USA national ones. So then the Y label will be GDP in billions of US dollars. And that'll be consistent actually across all of them. So maybe that wasn't necessary. But we can just leave it in there. Maybe you want to use different series down the line. You could adjust accordingly. And for now, we'll just keep it as observation star and observation end consistent. But again, that's something you can change if you wanted to. So now I'm going to put in the California GDP, which is that code I was showing you on the Fred API, or on the Fred website. And we're going to want to change this title a little bit to the California GDP. And the same thing with the unemployment rate. And then, the GDP in billions is consistently correct. But we could change the observation start and observation end if we wanted to. And I'm going to change this to be Texas, and this will be txurn, and it kind of follows that pattern in Fred. So if I wanted to do all 50 states, actually, if I was going to do that, I might want to do a for loop through all of these. But you could also, if you're only doing like a handful of states like I am, you can just call it this way. That would be fine. But again, the goal here is to just see how much more efficient this is than writing, hard coding this for 3 different states or 4 different states. Well, now we've also got to make sure we actually end up saving the PDF. So this is where we've reached the end of us creating the PDF in this function. And now we're going to have to call that final function, which is called create PDF. And then we'll test it, but this should end up creating the PDF with charts for these multiple different states. So yeah, again, in create PDF, we called both these other functions that we made earlier. And this pre-process function kind of does the pre-process add to PDF, does the bulk of the work. But you can just, again, say us calling it 3 times, sort of 50 lines of code. If you weren't using a user-defined function, that would probably be 150 lines of code and quite inefficient, really, just from a code maintenance standpoint. So let's go ahead and run this. And just make sure we don't have any sort of error. Which we do. So series object. And again, you can sort of troubleshoot as to where your issue is. It should show up in a red line as well. Yeah, so done something wrong here. Saying it's saying a series object. And just sort of to confuse matters, I called it series, but I think this line here is showing up as a series rather than a data frame. So I needed to put 2 other square brackets here. One more, so they're double, and then that'll definitely be a data frame and not trying to make it a series. So it was a bit confusing because I also called that series. Now it's a data frame at least. With series 1, which is the unemployment rate data. And yeah, again, it's a little bit confusing. Just I think because I called it series, which was a choice. And now we'll just double check there's no error this time. And it's looking good. And this is sort of in this stage. And you don't have to do this, but I'll kind of play around with making sure my spacing's good on the different pages. What can I change to just make it look a little better? So once we open this, we'll take a look at where the charts are, where the titles are, and so on. So yeah, obviously my title page is kind of run off the page. Probably best to just put that on 2 lines if I want to keep it at that size. That's in the wrong place as well. So a couple of things to change now. So here I'll just want to put the height lower, because it ended up at the top of the page for my title 1. And I'm going to center it a bit too. But I want it below this chart. Currently it's above this chart. So I want it right around there. And you can see it's consistent because we use the user-defined function. It's the same for all of them. Also, the axis could be better for the GDP chart, and the data looks like it may not be quarterly, but I'm just going to roll with it for now for demonstration purposes. It'll be fine, but we'll just go with it for the purposes of this video. But you probably want to check if that's the correct data. If you were really doing this. But let's go ahead and fix the height here, and also put the title on 2 lines. So yeah, we'll want to adjust that height as well. And also I think I'm going to make that text slightly smaller to be consistent with the title of the chart and just look a little bit better. But again, I want to get this height so it's below that chart. And we want to remember fix that to put it over 2 lines. So I'll just make another one just below it. So just put a second copy of that. And just sort of take the second half of it and then try and center this up. And you can adjust this up. I'm not going to make it perfect right now, but you can see how if you tinker around with it, you could get it to be just where you want it to be. You just kind of have to check it out and see how you want to change it. So let's take a look at what this looks like now. It should look a little bit better. Yeah, we could tighten up that gap, but our title's in a better place there for the chart. It could probably be centered a little bit more. And you can, again, you can play around with these things and keep on making sure it's perfect. I could also add more states. So if I wanted to add the next biggest state is either New York or Florida, just go ahead and add New York. And I just have to change a few settings here. Again, if you go much beyond this, it might be worth your while to loop through the state codes and state names. Perhaps make a dictionary of the state name / state code. So Texas could be TX and Texas or something of that nature, and you could loop through that. Again, I'm going to just tighten up that gap a little bit on the front page. And maybe center that a little bit better to the top line. And again, you can keep on playing with this as you go to make your final PDF look nicer. So let's open that. Yeah, so that's looking a little bit better again. Just kind of have to play around with it as you go with these different settings. But I think we've achieved what we need to in this video, where we show how you can use user-defined functions to reproduce or produce multiple pages on a PDF to make quite a lengthy report. And we did that in a pretty efficient manner. Again, all this code will be linked in the description below. We could keep on going through the states. I'll just add that comment about New York. But we could keep on adding more states, or you might find a for loop makes that more efficient the more you add. But yeah, this will be linked in the description below. Again, thanks for staying with me on this whole video. This and the preceding video will be linked in the description below. Thanks for watching.